Talk.com, ClemsonRadio.com will get you there as well. And if you just want to support us and stand behind us, we'd love to have you. $63.17 for 1 year's worth of coverage of your Clemson Tigers. More digital content than any other site covering your Clemson Tigers. That is ClemsonSportsTalk.com. That comes out to 18 cents a day. And today we may have gotten our first step back towards college football taking place in Tigertown, and you can read about it right now over on the website as Clemson University announced that football and basketball student athletes will be welcomed back to campus on June the 8th. So right around the bend, hard to believe. You felt like maybe a week or two ago you might never get to this point. I have designated June 1st as a major day in my personal calendar as to kind of knowing whether or not we will get things back to normal. But the reality is, or some semblance of normalcy, but the reality is that for Clemson, that'll take place not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, June the 8th, as Clemson University football, men's and women's basketball, student athletes will return to begin voluntary activities on campus. This news being announced as a part of Clemson's phases to the three-phase plan to get student athletes and students at some point back on campus. Clemson athletes may return to the Clemson area as early as June 1st while undergoing a period of social and physical distancing, 7 days at home prior to the return to the area and 7 days in the Clemson area, combining for the 2 weeks of social distancing. So the goal here, if you think about what we have learned about COVID-19 and the coronavirus, is that we are attempting, by going with this 14-day window, 7 at home, isolated from people, 7 at Clemson, isolated from people, hoping to really minimize the effects of COVID-19 on the spread of this virus in the hopes of getting Clemson's players back on campus and preparing for the 2020-2021 season. Now, once this period is complete, and the key here is without symptoms, those student athletes would be eligible to begin participation physicals with Clemson Sports Medicine. The physical includes a test for COVID-19 as well as the antibody test, and student athletes must also complete a daily screening before entering the facilities. According to Dan Radikovich, who said, "We are encouraged to begin the first step in the implementation of our phase 1 planning and appreciate the leadership of our university in helping us prepare for our student athletes and staff to return in early June. We are confident in our ability to provide a safe environment and have put our energy into that goal. We are encouraged by the progress and remain vigilant as we begin to welcome a limited number of student athletes back to our facilities." Now, we have reached out to Dan Radikovich in hopes of getting him on the program here in the next day or so to talk about this, and it is a significant moment, I think, for college football fans if this indeed ends up moving forward and taking place. Again, my personal kind of marker that we've been working around for the past few weeks is that June 1st date. And essentially part of the thought process behind that was, as we began to see restrictions loosening on businesses and restaurants and things of that nature to keep the economy alive, well, one thing that you had to kind of eyeball was what would take place in terms of the numbers of viruses and the infection rates, etc., that take place over these next couple of weeks. Again, with the Memorial Day weekend just taking place, and I'm sure, like me, many of you saw images of tons and tons of people out and about. I will caution you, first and foremost, to recognize, and I think this is always wise, that I think what you saw in the photos are probably a smaller few. You know, we talk about the vocal minority when it comes down to situations. I think what you saw there was not what the majority of people in our country were doing. Now, you still have to be, I think, concerned and hesitant because of just the limited amount of social distancing that you may have seen in those photos. And we know how infectious this virus has been. But I think the majority of people were not crowding in large groups and masses. I certainly traveled to the beach, stayed at my sister's beach house, and social distanced. And we didn't, I mean, you're on the beach, but we were far apart from other people. It wasn't a crowded beach scene by any means where I was. But I think that, again, we've still got some time between now and June the 8th. I think you will absolutely continue to be smart to monitor, and obviously the NCAA and Clemson University and everybody's going to monitor what these numbers look like off of a weekend like we just had, etc. But I think it's okay to be encouraged that you're getting back to the potential of having college football to some degree. And I think that any belief at this point that you are going to have a college football season with fans in attendance to a large degree, like packed stadiums, I don't think that's going to be a major issue because of a couple of things. One, I think there is a large portion of the population that aren't going to want to congregate in those types of areas. I just think that there are going to be a lot of people that are, IPTAY donors, have been to Clemson games for years and years, especially those individuals who are perhaps in the advanced ages, the 70, maybe 60 plus age group may say, you know what, this is not the year that I want to go. This is not the year that I'm going to attend football games. So that's going to cut out a portion of the population. And that's not going to mean everybody either, by the way. I mean, some of these people will still go. And who knows if Clemson institutes some sort of screening guidelines to get into the game. I have no idea if that would be something down the line where if you have a temperature at the gate, sorry, Charlie, kind of like having a purse that you can't see through, or trying to take an umbrella or whatever into the game. Not happening. Sorry, you got a temperature? That's worse than carrying an umbrella. An umbrella just obstructs the views of the people behind you. If you've got a temperature and you've got COVID-19, there's a chance you could kill the people around you. You might as well be carrying a loaded weapon in here. So, again, I don't think that we're going to have such numbers of people that are just going to want to pour into stadiums as much as I think fans just want to see these sports take place. And I've been critical about sports without fans. Not that it can't work and not that it's not working, but it's just not the same. Again, I think there's a tremendous amount of value on the fans in the arena. And I've tried to make that point now for several weeks that I think college football, professional sports, I think they're going to realize just how valuable fans are. I even believe they may recognize how important it is to have a packed stadium where you have a nice, loaded, raucous environment for every matchup. And if you can get those in charge to get their prices in the right spot down the road, I think you're looking at a circumstance where, this could be fairly beneficial over the long haul for fans in terms of what it costs to get into these games and venues, etc. But from the standpoint of Clemson, again, the news that came out earlier today, June the 8th, football and basketball players, both men's and women's basketball players, will be allowed to get back in and start working out in what they call voluntary activities. And there's going to be an amazing amount of space between these individuals when they're working out. I've seen several other universities putting out guidelines essentially saying that, they're going to be 20 players max working out, 10 feet between each player in terms of the equipment that they'll be utilizing in these in these facilities, and really doing their best to make it a safe environment for these student athletes, to make it an environment that is safe for the members of the team and I'm talking about not the players, but the staff members on the team, making sure it's safe for them, as they will have, people coming in and out of there. And these universities have obviously put a lot of thought into what they deem to be safe and how that could look like over the long haul. Clemson Athletics, again, is playing a 3-phase approach to this return, as we mentioned earlier. They've got clear oversight from the university. They're also taking in the guidance of the local and national health officials to figure out what the best practices are in this circumstance. I mean, this is new to everybody. And so the first phase, again, from Clemson University is going to begin rolling out. I love the fact that they're going to make these players isolate for 7 days at home, then isolate for 7 days at Clemson. I think that's smart. I think it is intelligent to make sure that you are checking the temperatures and giving a COVID-19 test and a test for antibodies, to do everything you can to, again, prevent the spread of this virus. Because I think worst case scenario, I said this maybe a week or two ago, is that you get out, you get into the season, you're doing things the right way, and then you have one kid on the team get infected, and then you get 10 guys with it. And then maybe your season has to stop. Maybe your season has to shut down completely. And I know for a fact that from the standpoint of fans, that's a horror show. I mean, that is the worst case scenario would be, here you are beginning to start your season only to have your team have to pull out from competition. And not everybody else has to sit. Let's say that a team like Alabama has no cases. Maybe they keep rolling along, but Clemson, who is the preseason favorite to win the national title and to compete for the college football playoff, what if they have a mass breakout on their team? They're done. You're out of here, or whatever. I have no idea what the dynamics on starting and stopping a season would look like. But again, with the guidelines in place and this being a moving target, you could see them saying, all right, we got to shut this thing down. It's gotten bad at school X or school Y. And I know that's not what you want to hear. That's not what you want to believe is going to happen. I certainly hope it doesn't happen. But again, when you think about what we're dealing with, that is something that you probably need to keep in the back of your mind. That is a possibility. And I think it's also a possibility that you get this thing rocking and rolling, and maybe it has to stop across the country. So there are tons and tons of variables in this scenario. But what we are beginning to see now is the belief that I think this is, again, something that's pushed from multiple fronts. And I think, look, in a world where money was not an object, not something people needed, and wealth was essentially owned by everybody, like if you could just have this perfect society, a perfect world where nobody needed jobs and everybody had plenty of food, and there was no pressure for business to succeed, and there was no pressure for universities to make money. Like if we could just, if you just had that, right? Like in a vacuum, perfect world, perfect society. I really don't think there's a whole lot of talk about getting back to sports. I really don't. But I think what we know, just like I don't believe if we were in a perfect society where everybody had plenty of money and wealth, and I know, again, this is a vacuum and a fake conversation to have, but I don't think people would be going, yeah, we really got to get back to work. We got to get the economy going. I think people would be like, all right, well, we'll just wait this thing out. We got enough oxygen in the tank here. If you're underwater scuba diving and you've got an unlimited supply of oxygen, there's no need to change the tank. I'll just stay on this oxygen tank. I'm good. The problem is that's not how society is. There's not an unlimited amount of quote unquote oxygen in this scenario, and you got to change the tank. And unfortunately, with what we're dealing with, if the fiscal approach gets bad enough, it would be the situation of maybe not having a tank to change to, or trying to change the tank while you're completely out of air. And so there's this balancing, there is a balance between it from the health and the economic side. And I said, I guess at some point last week, I think you could see this kind of go back and forth like a teeter-totter. You could see it where we go, health is what we're trying to protect initially, and economics took a blow. Now, health is stabilizing a little bit, and the economics is taking a hit, so we got to kind of reverse trends a bit. and bring forward the economic approach, and maybe that's at the sacrifice of health. Then I think if that gets bad enough, you could switch it back. And I think that's the balancing act we're dealing with. I think everybody would love to go back to what it was like on May 26, 2019, where you could shake hands with people, where you knew the college football season was coming, where businesses were open and nobody was worried about, the worst thing you were worried about at a restaurant was if the silverware was clean or not. So when we look at this and reflect, I think the reality of what we're dealing with here is a teeter-totter. And I believe that part of the reason that you're seeing this push to get back on campus is obviously the economics of it and what it would do to the universities, what it would do globally, especially in the United States, maybe more so than anywhere, if college athletics don't take place. I mean, that's huge. It's just absolutely huge. And so the universities also, I think, have pressure on them to be open in the fall, because if I'm a kid from New Jersey and you're going to be doing satellite classes, why? Why don't I just, I can take classes anywhere. If I got to stay in Jersey, I can take classes anywhere. So I think there is an economic aspect of this that is pushing things forward. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I still maintain that I think our health experts are the people we need to listen to at the end of the day. And I appreciate the fact that the universities and the athletic departments are doing their best to try to keep social distancing. They talk about face coverings, enhanced sanitation, all of the, or is it sanitization? I guess sanitation's taking out the trash. Sanitization is cleaning the equipment, doing all those things to modify and make sure that these are safe environments for student athletes to get into and to begin working out and take steps towards the 2020 college football season. Now, you want to talk about it, you can text us, 803-450-0086. Never text while you're driving. You can also hit us up on Twitter, at Clemson Sports. And again, the article up right now on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Go over there and check it out. Give us your feedback as well. You can comment in the forums on the article, Clemson Athletics welcomes football, basketball student athletes on June the 8th. Again, the text line, 803-450-0086. We hit a quick break and we come back with more on the show that shakes the Southland. It's
Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
Couple of tie-ups to tell you about this afternoon. The first, Rushmore at Broad River, also an accident, Kennerly Road at Hollingshed. I'm Rob Sanders. You can call me if you're stuck on the 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line, 343-1055.
This report is sponsored by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Lawton Swan here, and I know in sports we're always talking about the big guy. Well, let me tell you, when you're buying a car, you don't need that. What you need to do is head down to Orangeburg to my good friends at Ferry Chevrolet Cadillac. 4 generations of family-owned business right there at Ferry Chevrolet. No dock fees, no tricks, straightforward pricing in a low-pressure environment you'll love. Check them out online, ferrychevrolet.com, or call them 803-536-1600. It's Ferry Chevrolet Cadillac, just a short 30-minute drive off of exit 145A in Orangeburg.
Protect yourself and those you love from COVID-19. People in our community are getting sick and even dying. If you're 65 or older or have conditions like diabetes, heart disease, or lung disease, you're at greater risk of getting seriously ill. Stay well by staying home as much as possible and taking your prescribed medications. If you must go out for work or essential items, avoid close contact with others and wash your hands often. Visit scdheck.gov/COVID-19.
Hey guys, Lawton Swan here. I was hanging out in the backyard with my son Mason a couple of years ago, and he said, "Dad, you're the best father ever." When I asked him why, he said, "Because when I go outside to play, I don't get eaten up by the bugs anymore." Imagine that, me, a hero, when all I did was call my good buddy Trey Powell at Mosquito Joe. With their routine service plan, no more bugs and no more bites. Make yourself the family hero. Call Mosquito Joe today, 803-223-7916. That's 803-223-7916. Outside is fun again.
Hi, this is Kevin Hunter with Simplified Office Systems. We're here to help you with your home office. Whether you need a large multifunction device or something simple to sit on your desk, we can help with that. We offer products and strategies from HP. We also, with every product, give you remote support, troubleshooting, setup support, whatever you need, we are here to help. We can even put a Clemson logo on that new copy. Contact us by visiting mysimplifiedoffice.com or call us at 888-914-7476. Stay safe, stay strong.
You don't usually get a stock tip from a 16-year-old, but I'm here to tell you about a different kind of stock. It's called Better Futures, a stock for social change that's not about making money. Instead, you invest to help students like me go to college. This is beyond a simple donation. It's the opportunity for America to invest in its kids and take an active stake in the future of the country. The return on your investment isn't money. What you get back is knowing you protected our potential. So one day, that potential can grow up to become surgeons and architects, executives and engineers, people who can change the future just by being a part of it. My name is Alicia, and I am your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. A public service announcement brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Sensory sensitivity, repetitious behavior, lack of eye contact. You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Clemson Sports Talk. Join the show in the chat room at clemsonsportstalk.com.
It is the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. Going to be hard not to say a Monday. Hope you enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend and looking forward to chatting it up with you here over the next couple of days as we move towards the college football season. Again, that hot topic out of the gate, the fact that Clemson University football and basketball, both men's and women's players, will be allowed to return to campus on June the 8th, or resume practice on June the 8th. They'll be allowed to return to campus on June the 1st. So they'll get a week of quarantine there as well, taking strides towards hopefully getting back to the college football season. And speaking of the college football season, ESPN put together an interesting article I found earlier today about the top college football teams that failed to win national championships. And you know, you think about all of those great teams that, for one reason or another, either like a Southern Cal team that was defeated by Texas back in, 2005-ish, somewhere in that range. You know, all those teams that just couldn't quite get over the hump, or maybe even going back to the time where college football and the determining factor was not a playoff, where maybe one of the top teams just didn't win the title because the voters didn't think that they were worth winning a national championship, etc. So there are a lot in the list. They actually put together a list of 25 of these, and I'll run you through the list briefly here, maybe take a segment or so, and also get into some of those teams, and one in particular that I'm shocked wasn't on the list. So number 25 was the 1947 Michigan team. That team went 10-0. And because of a loss back in, I guess, 1943 to Notre Dame, Michigan didn't play the Fighting Irish that year. And Notre Dame, they didn't play for 35 years, as a matter of fact. And Notre Dame was deemed the national champion before the bowl game Everybody says that Michigan was essentially Notre Dame's equal that season, and although the Irish had already locked up a national title in terms of votes, Michigan went out to the Rose Bowl and beat Southern Cal 49-0. Now, what did happen after that was Detroit's AP voter arranged an unofficial postseason poll, and Michigan won that poll, but it didn't count according to this article, and even though Michigan claimed the title, Notre Dame was the team that was ultimately awarded the championship the way it was done back in the 1940s. Now, number 24 on that list was the 2011 LSU team that went 13-1. That LSU team was pretty incredible, I'll be honest with you. When you look at what they did from top to bottom, they beat the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. They beat Oregon, who finished 4th, Arkansas, who finished 5th. They beat number 17 West Virginia, number 19 Georgia. I mean, they were just Tyrann Mathieu, remember him? The Honey Badger was a part of that team. But in the BCS title game rematch against Alabama, they were demolished, losing 21-0, gaining just 92 yards. That was that rematch of the SEC championship game, or the rematch of the game previously in the year out in the battle out in the SEC West between those top teams. And some people believe that may be one of the better LSU teams ever, but didn't win the national title because of that rematch in the loss to the Crimson Tide. In the 1980, number 23 on this list is the 1980 Florida State team. They went 10-2. That was back before Bobby Bowden really kicked things into high gear. And Bobby Bowden back then had what they labeled a, quote, anyone, anywhere approach to the game, meaning they would essentially play anybody and everybody. That's kind of where they made their way. They shut out LSU to open that season. They knocked off number 3 Nebraska 18-14. They beat number 4 Pitt 36-22. That happened in back-to-back weekends in October. Ron Simmons from WWE fame was one of their leaders on that defense, along with Reggie Herring, former Clemson defensive coordinator. And ultimately, that team would finish 10-2. That was one of those early indications that Florida State was maybe on the rise. Speaking of Florida State, in 1987, they went 11-1 and were not the national champions. They would beat eventual Rose Bowl winner Michigan State by 9. They beat Auburn by 28 points on the road. Took down a top 5 Nebraska team in the Fiesta Bowl. According to some, that was the best Florida State team as of that point, but the Seminoles once again lost by a single point to Miami after blowing a 19-3 lead back in 1987, and the Canes would go on to win the national title that year after the victory over the Seminoles. Number 21, again, Florida State, and you think about some near misses for Coach Bobby Bowden during that time. This was 1992. They went 11-1. That year, Charlie Ward was phenomenal, throwing for 2,647 yards and rushing for another 504 yards. They had Marvin Jones leading the way on defense. They beat Florida, coached by Steve Spurrier, easily 45-24. They beat Nebraska, coached by Tom Osborne, 27-14. And for the third time in 6 seasons, Florida State's only loss came against Miami. You think about what a pillar at the top of college football Miami was back during those days. It is something to think about the talent that was in the state of Florida and those two Titans battling back and forth. Alabama went on to get beat by Dabo Swinney's, he was a part of the team, I should say, Alabama ball club. That was, of course, coached by Gene Stallings in the Sugar Bowl. Alabama would win the national title that year, but Florida State, again, 11-1. They wouldn't break through and win the national title until that following season. So 3 consecutive Florida State teams coached by Bobby Bowden there in that first 5 teams, taking a look back at teams who weren't quite good enough to win a national title, but were right there as ESPN's breaking down a list of the top college football teams that failed to win a national championship. And I'll give you another one real quick before we hit out to break. Number 20 on that list was the 1958 Oklahoma Sooners. That team went 10-1. Of course, legendary head coach Bud Wilkerson's 47-game winning streak came to a halt back in 1957, the previous season. They had one loss that year. They lost to Texas 15-14, but an unbeaten LSU team would hoist the national championship back in 1958. So that's number 20, the 1958 Oklahoma Sooners. There's still one missing that I think should probably be on this list, and we're not going to get to them here on the show today. We'll talk about why coming up in just a little bit. But when we get back, we'll take a look at 19 down on the list of the best teams to never win a national championship that potentially should have won a title right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us.
Tiger fans, look no further than the Tiger Sports Shop in Clemson for all your game day needs. Since 1974, they brought you everything Clemson for the Clemson fan. With quality brands such as Nike, Antigua, Cutter & Buck, and Champion, plus many more, from hats to t-shirts to tailgate, the Tiger Sports Shop has all the Clemson gear a true Tiger fan needs. With 2 convenient game day locations in Tigertown, shop where I shop at Dr. I.M. Ibrahim's Tiger Sports Shop. They fuel the passion of Tiger fans everywhere. Check them out online, tigersports.com.
The 2020 graduation is unlike any other. That's why T-Mobile is supporting iHeartRadio's Commencement podcast with inspiration from some amazing speakers. T-Mobile is also proud to announce the Uncarrier Jobs Initiative with a commitment to hire more than 5,000 new employees over the coming year. Head to T-Mobile.com/careers to learn more about joining the Uncarrier, no matter what year you tossed your cap. Then find your inspiration with iHeart's Commencement podcast in the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Alicia Kaufman-Quinton. My daddy, Billy Kaufman, opened Kaufman's Meat Plant at our present location in 1955. My family still works hard every day to ensure fresh quality cuts of beef, pork, and poultry. How about a tasty T-bone, ribeye, or New York strip steak? But to order at Kaufman's Meat and Place, just look for the signs near the intersection of US 1 and I-20 in Lexington. Call us at 356-0076 to place your order. Kaufman's Meat and Place, when you want the very best your money can buy.
Live from the $1,500 instant rebate AAA Heating and Air Weather Center.
Overnight, the rain will pick up and we'll see lows in the upper 60s. Tomorrow, rainy, highs around 80. For Channel 25 ABC Columbia, I'm Chief Meteorologist John Farley.
This report is sponsored by AARP and the Ad Council. For those fortunate enough to care for the person who has always been their hero, AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Jill, why didn't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving supports victims of drunk driving, drug driving, and underage drinking at no charge. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org. That's MADD.org.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. I opened a 401k.
So you're giving up, just like that.
Giving up on what?
I'm getting an inheritance from a distant relative.
Don't you think if there were a billionaire in the family, we'd know about it by now?
Listen to me. We are one phone call away from riding horses on our own private polo grounds. One call from christening yachts, having a butler, using summer as a verb.
How do you figure?
Look, everyone's got a rich uncle somewhere. It's statistics. So the best thing you can do is just prepare for the inevitable.
Right, which is why I thought maybe it would be smart to take control of my finances. You know, start using a budget, get out of debt, set some retirement goals.
Budgets? Debt? You watch your mouth. Retirement shouldn't be a goal for us. It should be a way of life.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Until that stimulus check arrives, you mind sharing your mac and cheese? Fox Sports Radio 1400. We'll bring the ramen.
It is Clemson Sports Talk, continuing our look at the top college football teams that failed to win the national championship according to ESPN. We left off at number 20. Now at number 19, it was 1945. Navy went 7-1-1. They are the team that one of the top 20 teams considered to never win a national title. The 1945 season, which was started with World War II coming to a close, dominated that year by Army. There was a strong team to claim as maybe the greatest ever, and unfortunately for Navy, as good as they were, the midshipmen tied Notre Dame 6-6 in Cleveland, gave Army a fight. Still were defeated, though, 32-13. But back during those days, with all the great athletes ending up at the military institutions, that 1945 Army team still considered to be one of the greatest of all time to not win a national title. Number 18 was the 1976 Michigan Wolverines. They went 10-2. Bo Schembechler, of course, legendary Michigan Wolverines head coach. They ranked second in scoring defense, giving up less than 8 points per game, if you can believe that, just 7.9 points per game. They were first in scoring offense, scoring 36 points per game, but still a 10-2 season was not enough. Number 17 was the 1940 Tennessee Volunteers. They went 10-1. General Robert Nealand was, of course, the head coach there. They claimed a share of the 1938 national title, while the AP poll gave it to TCU. They pitched a shutout for the entire 1939 regular season. And the 1940 team was also very good defensively, allowing a total of 45 points the entire year. And they also made up for that with tremendous firepower, according to this article. But unfortunately for the Volunteers, they were defeated in the Sugar Bowl by Boston College. That Boston College team was coached by Frank Leahy, who would go on to leave there that following season to take over at Notre Dame. At number 16, it was the 1972 Oklahoma Sooners. The Sooners that year, folks, went 11-1. In 2005, there it was, that Southern Cal team I mentioned earlier. That team led by Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Lindell White. They were absolutely loaded. They averaged 50 points per game during the regular season. Nobody thought that Vince Young and Texas could find a way around them. And ultimately, in that BCS National Championship game, Vince Young did just an incredible job, scoring with 19 seconds left, lifting the Longhorns to a 41-38 victory. That USC team was one of the best teams maybe ever assembled, yet there were moments in that game like the indefensible pitchback that Reggie Bush had and things of that nature that just kind of made you think that maybe Southern Cal thought a little bit more about themselves than they should have on that stage. And while it may have been Pete Carroll's best team ever, ultimately Mac Brown gets the national title. Number 14 on this list was the 2008 Southern Cal team. Southern Cal had been a stalwart at the top of college football, reminiscent to what we've seen from Alabama in recent years. But in 07 and 08, those Trojan teams took a couple of head-scratching losses, a 24-23 upset to Stanford in 2007. But this 2018 lost to Oregon State on the road, and a lot of people believe that if the college football playoff had existed instead of a BCS era, this team would have probably been the national champions. They beat Notre Dame, by 35. They beat UCLA by 21. They beat Cal by 14. Number 13 on this list, the 2008 Texas Longhorns. That team went 12-1 during that 08 season. They would, of course, go on to play Alabama in the national championship, and the Crimson Tide would come away with a victory. Again, that was two teams back-to-back there, 2008, that were perceived to be two of the top 25 teams ever to not win a national title, both Texas and Southern Cal. Now, in 2012, number 12 on this list was the 2016 Alabama Crimson Tide. You know this team well. They went 14-1. This was, of course, the team that Deshaun Watson and Hunter Renfrow beat with 1 second remaining on the clock. We just talked about that game the other day as ESPN replayed that on, I believe that was Thursday evening that they had it on their Throwback Thursday edition. Jalen Hurts, of course, was the quarterback back then for the Crimson Tide, and they were looking for their second consecutive national title after defeating Clemson the year prior out in Arizona. Although they beat eventual Rose Bowl champion Southern Cal by 46 points, they beat ranked Ole Miss and Arkansas teams on the road. They beat a top 10 Tennessee team and top 10 Texas A&M teams by a combined score of 82-24. And while everybody thought they would certainly win the national title, that did not come to be the case. That did not end up being the case, as Deshaun Watson and Clemson would put together an unbelievable final drive in just the dying seconds to bring Clemson their first national title in 35 years down in Tampa. Number 11 on this list, the 1966 Alabama team, they did go 11-0, and according to the article, they said books have been written about why voters chose a blemished Notre Dame team over a famously undefeated 11-0 Alabama squad, but that's just the case. And if you look back through the history books, I can tell you there are plenty of accounts of the Fighting Irish finishing number one when I would argue they didn't deserve it. But Alabama is one of those teams that also has called into question championships, this being one of those that the Crimson Tide often hoist, but they were not the national champs back in 1966. Heading into the top 10, the 1986 Miami Hurricanes. They had won the title in 1983. They were a dominant team in 1986, taking on number 2 Penn State in the national title. The Hurricanes, as a matter of fact, outgained Penn State in that game. If you're a kid, you've never seen it, go back and find that one wherever you can on YouTube. Throw that in your Google machine. Miami versus Penn State for the national championship. They outgained Penn State 445-162. Miami was the bad boys of college football. Penn State was the team everybody wanted to see win the national title, and the Nittany Lions would coming away with a victory there over the Miami Hurricanes in their home stadium, in Miami's home stadium. All right, we hit a quick break. We're inside the top 10. We'll wrap it up here on Clemson Sports Talk in terms of the top college football teams to never win the national title with you here on the show that shakes the Southland. Again, on Twitter, at Clemson Sports. And this list is an incredible list. Can't wait to finish it up with you here and get into one of the teams that I still contend, I believe, should be on this list that you're not going to find inside this top 10. I misspoke earlier, but we are going to get into that. We're going to talk about the team that I believe should be on this list that ESPN left off right after this.
These days, being a small business means navigating uncertainty in a constantly changing situation. So if you're looking for one trusted source that will keep you informed daily, visit the iHeartRadio Small Business Crisis Resource. There you'll find small business resources to help you get through this, including the latest info on loans, grants, and other forms of relief. You'll also see stories about small businesses making a difference. So let's get through this together. Visit iHeart.com/smallbusiness today. That's iHeart.com/smallbusiness.
Warning. If you're drowning in debt you can't afford, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to pay it all back, because you don't. What the credit card companies don't want you to know is that there's actually a way to get debt-free without paying off your entire debt or going bankrupt. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, you now have the right to let us settle that debt for a fraction of what you owe. For free information, call Credit Associates now. 1-800-500-7609. We'll even show you how much money you could save. If you can't afford to pay off all your debt, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to. Call Credit Associates now for free information on how to get debt-free faster than you ever thought possible, without debt consolidation or bankruptcy. We depend on your success and offer a guarantee, so there's no risk. For free information, call now. 1-800-500-7609. That's 1-800-500-7609. 1-800-500-7609.
Graduating is a huge step for the class of 2020, and while it may look a little different this year, it doesn't take away from everything you've accomplished. That's why iHeartRadio and State Farm teamed up for Commencement, a podcast to give you some neighborly wisdom from the biggest names in music, entertainment, and more to help you today and in the future. The Commencement podcast is brought to you by State Farm. Listen to iHeartRadio's new podcast, Commencement. Speeches are out now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't wait. Now is the perfect time to make sure your AC unit is working properly. Call the pros at On Call. On Call has trained technicians, not trained salespeople, to make sure your unit is ready for the South Carolina heat. Call today and schedule an On Call spring tune-up special for just $75. Call On Call Plumbing, Heating, and Air 24/7 at 803-781-HELP. That's 781-HELP.
On Call Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Pick up the phone and we'll be right there. Call 781-HELP.
Right now, the world feels different as we stay apart to make sure we can safely come back together. Till then, there is something you can do without even leaving your home. Respond to the 2020 census online, by phone, or by mail. The census impacts where hundreds of billions in federal funding will go for things like hospitals, schools, and roads. Now is the time to go to 2020census.gov. It's as easy as it is important. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
The class of 2020 had a piece of their journey taken, so iHeartRadio, along with some of the most influential voices in the world, are giving it back the best way we can. Commencement, the podcast, will host an unprecedented amount of inspirational speeches that we can all use right now. General Stanley McChrystal.
Accept that this crisis sucks. It does. But finding a sense of purpose is how we all emerge stronger.
And many, many more. Commencement, the podcast, ready for you now on the free iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique, but you are not alone. MAD is here to help. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org. That's MADD.org.
Fox Sports Radio 1400. Online at foxsportsradio1400.com. On your phone with the iHeartRadio app and on hundreds of devices like Alexa, Google Home, Xbox, and Sonos. An iHeart radio station.
It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk on a Tuesday afternoon, taking a look back at the top teams that ever win a national title. Now, some of these here on the back end, I don't know a ton about, so we're going to breeze through them pretty quickly so I can get to my take about a team that's missing from this list, in my opinion. Now, we left off talking about the 1986 Miami Hurricanes that went 11-1, lost to Penn State. Of course, that Penn State championship was the second for head coach Joe Paterno. He won in 82 and 1986. Well, in 1994, many people believe Penn State may have had their best team, better than both the 82 and the 86 team. That 1994 Penn State team went 12-0 during the season. But again, this was back when you didn't get to square off at the top because you were one of the top two teams. You may just not be there. And unfortunately for Penn State, Nebraska was the team deemed the champs. What a bitter way to have your season, career, whatever you want to call it, in being undefeated but not get a chance to battle for the national title when you're playing Power 5 college football. Number 8 on this list, the 2018 Alabama team. Hey, that was the team that Clemson shellacked 44-16 in the national championship. Nick Saban has won 5 national titles at Alabama. At that point, you could have made the case that this was one of his 2 best teams. The 2017 national title hero, Tua Tagovailoa, after making an unbelievable pass in overtime against Alabama, comes out, throws an early pick 6, and from that point forward, Clemson just rolled the Crimson Tide. The terrible fake field goal call. I mean, they kind of go through all of that team, but they say that 2018 Alabama team was number 8 on the list. It probably would have been higher, they mentioned, had Clemson not blown their doors off. That kind of knocked them down a couple of rungs, they said. The 1973 Ohio State team that went 10-0-1, they actually tied Michigan in the final regular season game, and because the Wolverines quarterback had gotten injured, and the fact that they say a lot of people didn't like Bo Schembechler at that time, the Big Ten ADs voted to send the Buckeyes out to the Rose Bowl, but that team finishing 10-0-1 would not win the national title. The 1971 Oklahoma team went 11-1. The Sooners were 6th on this list. They will forever be known as the vanquished team in the 1971's game of the century against Nebraska. But in their other 11 games, the Sooners outscored their opponents by an average of 46-17. So they pretty much dominated everybody but that one matchup. Number 5 was the 2019 Ohio State Buckeyes. Of course, the Clemson Tigers were a part of that victory as well, 29-23, being down 17-0, coming back. They are 5th on the list of the best teams to ever play that failed to win a national title. In 1983, Nebraska comes on that list at 12-1. They had come close to winning titles in 78, 79, 1980, and 1982. And that 1983 team was fully weaponized, they say. They destroyed number 4 Penn State in the Kickoff Classic. Minnesota was defeated 84-13. They beat Syracuse 63-7. These were the early makings of Tom Osborne's powerhouse program with the Cornhuskers. They just had to beat Miami in the Orange Bowl. And instead of taking a tie, could have settled for a tie and probably won the national title, Osborne rolled the dice and went for 2. They end up losing 31-30. The 1987 Oklahoma Sooners are on the list at 11-1, along with the 86 Oklahoma Sooners. Over the 85, 86, and 87 seasons, get this, Oklahoma went 33-3. The Sooners beat Texas 3 times by an average score of 35-9. But the team they couldn't beat, the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, and Miami, knocking them off in those 3 games, according to this article. And they just couldn't quite get it done. And you know that had to be frustrating back then for the Oklahoma Sooner fans. And just kind of being right there on the cusp of a national title. But Barry Switzer's ball clubs couldn't quite get it done, continuing to fall to the Hurricanes during that stretch. And then finally, a team I didn't know anything about, the 1959 Ole Miss Rebels. They went 10-1. They lost to LSU by a score of 10-7. The Shreveport Times headline that day wrote, "Tigers upset Ole Miss to maintain 4-year jinx." Ole Miss during that stretch went 38-5-1 from 1958 to 1961. They were 0-3-1 against LSU, 38-2 against everybody else during that time, during that stretch. But could not quite get over the hump and are considered to be the best team to never win a national championship, according to ESPN. Now, one notable team not mentioned at all, your 2015 Clemson Tigers. That 2015 team was absolutely loaded with talent. And I've said I thought it was the best team that Clemson had under Coach Dabo Swinney, and that includes the 2016 national champions and the 2018 national championship teams. That Clemson Tiger team with Mackenzie Alexander, I'm not sure if Mac Alexander stays healthy, the Clemson doesn't win that national championship. And I'm not telling you that every list and everybody puts together needs to have the Clemson Tigers in it, because obviously Clemson affected, 3 of the teams on this list. But the reality is that 2015 Clemson Tiger football team that went 14-1, I would make the argument should be pretty high on this list as well. And I'll be honest with you, I think it's possible. I don't know that they should or should not be there, but I think it would be worth talking about last year's Clemson team not making this list and how good they were by comparison to their contemporaries. Again, it's not a perfect list. It's one person's opinion. It was a lot of fun to kind of dive into it, but there probably should be maybe 2 Clemson teams. I really believe that 2015 team. But perhaps the 2019 Clemson Tigers should also have been a part of ESPN's list of the best teams that failed to win a national championship. Around the corner, hour number 2. If you are a fan of this show, you know what a Tuesday means. We talk a little bit about the Tigers, the Gamecocks, maybe even the Bull Jackets, the Bulldogs, the Yellow Jackets. Got to combine it sometimes, I guess. And the Seminoles with our good buddy Mike Yuva from Watch Fox 57. Stay with us, hour 2 on the flip side.
On Columbia's home for sports, Fox Sports Radio 1400. Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
Couple of tie-ups to tell you about this afternoon. The first, Rushmore at Broad River, also an accident, Kennerly Road at Hollingshed. I'm Rob Sanders. You can call me if you're stuck on the 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line, 343-1055.
This report is brought to you by Positive Coaching Alliance. Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCA.org.
Group training is a fun, accountable way to get in shape. I'm Coach Stewart of Dynamic Health and Fitness. Come train with one of our special groups today. We will focus on giving you the support you need to get in shape. We use the Dynamic Mob, featuring intervals of cardio, functional training, and strength training to change your lifestyle to make you healthy. Get started today at any of our locations in Lexington or West Columbia, or call 803-408-4060 or online at dynamichealthclub.com.
For 28 years, the professional staff of the Hobbs Group and Hobbs Group Advisors has been dedicated to helping others achieve their financial goals by delivering quality, objective financial and accounting solutions to a diverse client base of individuals and businesses all over South Carolina. We offer tax and audit services, bookkeeping, payroll, litigation support, employee benefits, personal financial planning, investment management, and insurance services. Please call us at 803-799-0555 or visit our website, hobbscpa.com, to learn more about our people and services.
When a community grows, its hospital should grow too. And that's just what we're doing at Lexington Medical Center. We recently launched the largest hospital expansion project in South Carolina history. Our new 10-story patient tower will help us take better care of patients, including the tiniest infants who need special attention. It will also make room for the growing number of patients who need surgery and intensive care. At Lexington Medical Center, our mission to serve our community never wavers. We're here when you need us today, and we'll be there when you need us tomorrow.
Veritas Urgent Care in Lexington does things a bit different than the competitor. We keep wait times low, are veteran-focused, and handle both insured and uninsured patients at low costs. Most importantly, every patient gets the time necessary from Dr. Hatami to treat their needs. And we're now COVID-19 testing through a secure and separate part of the building. Call Veritas Urgent Care today to make your appointment. 803-399-8793. We put the urgent in urgent care.
Every year, Steve Faircal climbs the stairs at the John Hancock Center in Chicago, 94 floors to the top.
It's called the Hustle Up the Hancock.
It's hard to believe when you watch Steve today that a few years ago, his lungs were failing and he was fighting to survive.
For 8 hours a day, someone was pounding on my chest to try and keep my lungs clear. I honestly don't think I had more than a couple weeks to live.
That's when Steve received the gift of life, a double lung transplant made possible by an organ donor.
After I got my new lungs, I started doing things that I had never been able to do. I never knew that breathing could feel this good.
Steve climbs to honor his donor and to raise awareness for organ, eye, and tissue donation.
Wouldn't you like that when you left this beautiful planet, that you could save a few lives on your way out? It's an incredible gift.
Imagine what you could make possible by leaving behind the gift of life. Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Major key alert. Don't ever play yourself. Life is like school. You will be tested, so pass it.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at GetSchooled.com.
Stay focused. Now that's a major key alert.
Brought to you by Get Schooled and the Ad Council.
Fox Sports Radio 1400, WCOS Columbia, an iHeart radio station.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set! Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Lawton Swan hanging out with you. Again, you can call the show 803-450-0086. I know you might look at the number below me if you're watching and go, "Ooh, that's the phone line." Don't call that one. Call the text line. Leave a message. We'll get you on the program. 803-450-0086. That's also the text line. Coming up on the program, Mike Uva joins us here momentarily from Watch Fox 57. We've had a good time during the downtime in sports, talking with Mike Uva about his adventures to the Jerry Springer show back in the day, his adventures as businesses are beginning to open, and he's been out and about just a little bit, checking it all out, and certainly continuing to social distance. But Johnny on the spot with us here every week. Last week, as a matter of fact, doing his segment from the shadows of Williams-Brice Stadium. So Mike Uva going to be coming on here in just a few minutes. Mike, my man, hope you're doing well. What's going on, buddy?
I'm doing much better now, hearing that there could be some hockey coming back soon, and more sports the better at this point, right?
Buddy, I'll tell you what, I'm still not a huge fan of it without fans, but I watched the golf this weekend. I thought that was great. I watched some NASCAR this weekend. That was fun. I'm getting more accustomed. I think that's really what it is. I think it's an acclimation period for fans to kind of get used to the fact that fans aren't there.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it on your show the last couple of weeks. I mean, it stinks. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Obviously, we want to have fans in the crowd, and I know Charles Barkley doesn't feel this way, but hockey's one of those sports that you do need to be able to have fans there. I knew, one of my buddies who plays for the Nashville Predators, he took exception to what Chuck said on this weekend on Sunday, when we were talking about the Brady, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and Peyton Manning golf tournament. But I think if you're able to have fans out there to some degree, I mean, even if it's just 100 fans, 1,000 fans, obviously that's better than nothing. But at the same time, too, I feel like we're just at that point where we just need to be able to have sports back to make us feel like we're feeling normal. I mean, think about it. That golf tournament, I understand at the end of the day, it's golf. Maybe NASCAR is the only other sport that I feel like maybe the crowd doesn't impact the actual game itself. I know some NASCAR fans down here might not feel that way, but I mean, come on, you're in a car, you're going a couple laps around. I mean, if there's fans in the crowd or not, I don't think you're really going to be able to tell.
Yeah.
With that being said, did that really make a difference this past Sunday in the golf outing? I don't think it did. So if we just have sports back, I think it's just going to be better for everyone. But at some point, yes, you got to be able to ease the crowds back into it, because it's just not going to feel the same.
And, of course, you mentioned the NHL. Some of the thought process that we see is that they've approved a plan for a 24-team playoff format if the season does indeed get to resume. We've kind of seen the same thing being presented from the NBA standpoint of a playoff type, maybe tournament style finish to their season to involve everybody and to make it very exciting. We look at the excitement that the NCAA tournament puts together, and I know there's some changes here and there with the NBA's format to really make this thing work. But the reality is that I think they want everybody involved, but they also want to do this as swiftly as possible and not elongate the season if they have to.
They do. And I think regardless, you're going to have not just fans, because look, fans, I mean, it's not about you. I hate to say it, but some teams are going to be upset by it. And it's not necessarily the teams you would think, okay, if you're the number 1 seed, you're the number 2 seed. Because I'm looking right now at the Eastern Conference for hockey. You'd have the Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning, Washington Nationals, and Philadelphia Flyers. You would think, and I'm not just saying this for hockey, but for basketball, if they expand the playoff, you would think naturally, okay, you're going to have more teams in the playoffs. That really screws the top seeds. Well, not really. I mean, they're going to be in the tournament regardless. The people that it really screws are the people that are on that 7, 8, 9 bubble too. I mean, not necessarily that 9, but that 6, 7, 8 seed, because now it's like, hey, wait, I did everything I had to do to get into the tournament. Now there's people behind me that wouldn't have made it at that 9 seed, at that 10 seed, that are going to be essentially able to have a playing game. So that playing game scenario is what would really piss me off if I'm one of those teams that right now, if you just have that imaginary line, you're in the tournament based on that being that, top 8 seed. So I think you're going to have some teams that are going to be really upset by this. But at the end of the day, just like with everything, like we talked about with the fans in the crowd, there's going to be a little push, okay? There's going to be a little give and go. You're going to have to be able to just make some sacrifices, because that's just where we are right now. Nothing's going to be perfect. And at the end of the day, we just want to be able to have sports back, regardless of how many teams are in the tournament.
We're talking with Mike Uval, Watch Fox 57, about everything going on in the world of sports. And earlier today, we found out that Clemson University announced that voluntary football workouts will be allowed to begin June the 8th. They will also allow both men's and women's basketball players on campus. There will be a week acclimation period beginning on June the 1st for those individuals there after having to have been quarantined for a week prior to arriving on campus. So clearly schools out there, including Clemson and South Carolina and many others, taking every single precaution necessary, or at least deemed necessary right now, to take these steps forward. Mike, if I had to ask you on a scale of how concerned are you that things could get, the reins could get pulled back or the rug pulled out from underneath fans who are so optimistic, as we sit here today on May 26th, where do you think that number is that we could end up seeing another shutdown? Are you fairly optimistic that will or won't happen?
I think it's just so tough to say, because I think right now you're seeing parts of the country already slowly starting to open. You're seeing other places like Massachusetts. You're seeing places like New York that are still not really open yet. So I think that the tough thing is that we're in a place right now in the country. I know this is a world pandemic, so it's not just a thing that we're just dealing with here in the U.S., but when you look at it from a standpoint of South Carolina, from a market standpoint, and you know this from radio, but from a market standpoint, South Carolina is not that big. It's really not that big when you're talking about some of these other states. I mean, we're usually right in the middle. Greenville's a little bit bigger in terms of, when you talk about DMA, and that's another story for another day when you're talking about TV and radio. But for the most part, South Carolina is not that big when you're talking about a lot of these cities. So South Carolina is starting to ease into things a little bit quicker because the population is not that big. Some of these other places that are just so much bigger, you try to get back to work and try to get back to business as usual, things might not go as smoothly. So I think the challenge is, and that's why I'm kind of surprised to see right now with the ACC and how quickly they're going to be able to move things along, because, I think it for a while I was thinking, man, it's really unfair for a school like Clemson, because they should be able to open up if the University of South Carolina is having players come on campus, because Boston College, they're in a different situation right now than compared to a school like Clemson. So I think the challenging thing is that you're not going to be able to make things from a competitive advantage. Things aren't going to be fair. The playing field is not going to be fair. Things are going to be all over the place. It's going to give an unfair advantage to some schools. But, talking to two coaches last week, both at the FBS level, at the end of the day, obviously they hate to see that this is going on, but they both agreed that at the end of the day, when you're a coach, you're trying to find whatever advantage you can get. And if they're saying, hey, your school can go on campus and be able to do the voluntary workouts, while another school that you play against in your conference, they can't, you're not going to sit there feeling bad for them. You're going to take advantage of the things that you can be able to do.
Mike, on the standpoint of the fans getting back into the arenas, maybe even college football, could you see a scenario where there are certainly limited numbers, but is there a possibility that there could be temperature scans, in your estimation, as people head into venues?
Oof, I mean, I think what it comes down to is the number. What are we talking about here? And I know every university, and not just colleges, but when we're talking about professional sports team too, that number is going to be different. That number is not going to be the same, because it's going to be more of a percentage than anything else. So I think when you look at Power 5 schools, you would think, okay, they have maybe some of the resources that they can be able to do that in comparison to some of the smaller FBS level schools, or, even trickling down to FCS, since we have so many here in South Carolina when you're talking about Furman and the Woffords of the world. I think the tough thing is how can you do it in a safe manner? Because everyone keeps talking about the number of people that are going to be in the stands, right? The tough part about that is, how are you going to be able to, number one, safely get them into the stadium, and number two, be able to get them out of the stadium? Because at some point there's going to be lines. And I mean, we're not going to your local, Chipotle where, okay, everyone's 6 feet apart when you're going to go get a burrito. How are you going to tell me that people aren't going to be right on top of each other? So, that's going to be a tough part right there. And then you throw in the other factor, like you said, being able to take people's temperatures. Think how quickly that would need to be able to get done in order to get people in their seats. I mean, how far out are they going to have to get in line before a game? Is there ever going to be any tailgating? If there is tailgating, what time do they have to get in line to store themselves? So I think there's a lot of challenges it would create, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're able to do it. The question comes down to how can you do it in a safe manner, and obviously that's well above my pay grade.
Man, and I think about the college kids. You know, there have been proposals and conversations out there that say, hey, if anybody should be at these games, it should be the students at these universities. I don't know if they're the priority, though. I'll be honest with you. I think that the institutions are going to try to keep the big money donors happy. How in the world, I do not envy Ray Tanner or Dan Radakovich in trying to figure out how to balance that if you do indeed come up with a acceptable number of people allowed into the stands. I think it is a nightmare waiting to happen.
Well, I think one thing is a guaranteed. You're going to piss off someone. You're going to piss off someone. You're going to piss off certain people, whether that's donors, whether that's students, whether that's family. I mean, that's something else that I'm sure you've seen. People talked about, well, you know, they should ensure that the families are able to get inside to go see their children play. I agree with that 100%. I agree that the students, you know, I mean, that's part of the college experience. I mean, I joke with my buddies. I said, oh, we screwed up. We shouldn't have played Division II football. We should have gone to an SEC school or have come down here and go to Clemson and be able to get the college experience, because that's part of the college experience, especially in the South, is being able to go to football games. But at that same time, we all know that money makes the world go around. And at this situation, at this time, when you're talking about the situations that are going on, we know what's happening over at Furman with baseball and lacrosse, having to close down their programs. You need to be able to get as much money as possible. So sometimes you got to make those donors the ones that are going to have to be the happy ones. And because of that, you're going to piss off some people who maybe are more deserving to go in terms of their relationships with the players, or in terms of just being that, you know, a student being able to go to the game. So I'm very interested myself to see how it plays out, but I would be shocked. I would be shocked if the donors aren't towards the top of the list in terms of making sure that they're a priority of getting into the game, because you want to make sure that you're being able to get as much money as possible to be able to support not just that football program, but to be able to support other athletics, which is going to be a huge, huge just headache to deal with. Not just this year, but probably for the next 2 or 3 years.
Some breaking news out of Tiger Town. The Clemson football team has picked up a commitment from Zaire Patterson. Clemson's hopes to land a big-name defensive lineman in that 2021 class, adding in Zaire as a 4-star kid out of Winston-Salem. From the standpoint of Coach Dabo Swinney in this group, you look at what they've done over the past couple of weeks, from Barrett Carter to Will Shipley and then Bubba Chandler out of the state of Georgia, and now adding Zaire Patterson, some news that just broke momentarily, just minutes ago. From that standpoint, Mike, you've watched this program under Dabo Swinney for several years now. Boy, the rich tend to just keep on getting richer in college football.
I know it's not the exact same, but it's tough for me not to make a comparison to what Gino Auriemma was able to do for a while and what Nick Saban's been able to do, obviously, with Alabama, and that's a better comparison. But they've got to that point now where, and you know, we've seen Dabo kind of make jokes about it in some regards. I know he hasn't said it directly like this, but it's like, hey, if you don't want to come to Clemson, that's on you. I mean, who the hell wouldn't want to go to Clemson, especially with what they've been able to accomplish? I know Gamecock fans might not necessarily agree with that, but in terms of just the success standpoint, look what Clemson's been able to do. And not just at the college level, but in terms of developing talent for the NFL. I mean, that's a dream that, you know, Marcus Lattimore told me with USC, and I'm sure it's the same way with Clemson. When those players arrive, especially the scholarship ones, he said 99% of them truly believe that they're going to go play at the next level. So if you're going to Clemson, if you're getting recruited, you're a 4-star, 5-star, and you have an opportunity to go play there, you're thinking about playing at that next level someday. Being able to play at Clemson, I mean, you kidding me? You have a chance to be able to compete for a national championship every year. And then on top of that, you have a chance to be able to make some pretty good money at that next level, because you've seen that success rate of being able to get guys ready for that next level. So I'm not shocked by it. I think the challenging part's going to be keeping those guys there, because at some point you're going to run into a situation where, and we've seen it with Alabama too, where you're going to have to wait your turn. The player's going to have that patience. They're going to be patient, or they're going to want to go off somewhere else, especially, you know, once we start talking about being able to use your likeness and be able to go do some deals on the side and this and that, be able to do book signings, commercials. The players are going to want to sit back and wait. I think that's going to be the challenging part, and that's something I'm interested to see. But I can't see it really screwing too many things up for Clemson, because they're getting players left and right, because who wouldn't want to go there?
Yeah, it has been an amazing run, and obviously from the standpoint of Coach Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. A big-time pickup in Zaire Patterson, a young man that I know they've been very interested in after the decommitment of Corey Foreman, which with the coronavirus seems like that was about 3 years ago, but that's kind of the way things are, man. The news cycle is so strange now that I mentioned the word, acclamation earlier for the fans. I mean, it's an acclamation period for all of us, really.
And the interesting thing that's going to happen moving forward, and like I said, I don't think Clemson's in a situation where they're going to be taking too many hits from many things in terms of recruiting, but that's going to be interesting to see how schools are affected financially moving forward these next couple of years. We hear about Jordan Burch and the thousands of dollars that South Carolina extended out to him essentially to be able to come on campus, make sure his family was taken care of, all the stuff that's done legally. Clemson does the same things. We know they take him out to Hall's Chop House out in Greenville. How much of that budget gets cut back at some point? Because that's something that might have to get taken care of and it's going to affect recruiting in some degree. Do I feel like that's going to ultimately flip a lot of players' decisions? No, but it's something to keep an eye on because there could be a player or two that you might not be able to recruit as heavily just because the budget isn't going to be there like it was, prior to this pandemic.
Mike, always good chatting with you, brother. Have a good day. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, Mike Uval, Watch Fox 57, fired up and ready to go as always here on the show that shakes the Southland, talking a little bit about college football, talking a little bit about your Clemson Tigers and getting back to some semblance of normalcy. And I don't know when we'll cross that threshold. It is obviously a unique timeline. There are going to be people disappointed. There are going to be people frustrated by the fact that, they may, you could ultimately not be able to get in if you have a temperature, but they've had clear bag policies in place. They've had different standards of what you can and can't bring into the stadium, and people have had to leave and go back. So it's not as if this is something that is completely unheard of, but to try to temperature check an entire group, I don't know, man, the way people like to walk up to the games. But again, maybe if you have less numbers going in, it would be easier to pull off. And I don't know that this will be the standard practice either, first and foremost. But I think there is a distinct possibility that could be the case over the long haul, is that we do see maybe I shouldn't say over the long haul, but over the next few months, and as these policies come rolling out, maybe it's, hey, there's going to be 15,000 people, 7,500 students, 7,500 other fans. There's going to be social distance in the seating, and we are going to, temperature check people as they come in. I mean, these are things that are not just, oh my goodness, how could this ever happen? But these are things that most likely I would believe could happen and possibly will happen. So just keep that in mind as we roll along and try to figure this all out together. I mean, that's part of the fun in this, at least, is the uncertainty and the speculation. And some of you may say, man, I hate uncertainty. I hate speculation. I want to know. But, for me, from the standpoint of hosting the show and running the website, it keeps us on our toes. That's for sure. It keeps us on our toes. Again, Clemson picking up a commitment just a few minutes ago from Zaire Patterson, defensive end out of the state of North Carolina. We hit a quick break. We come back with more of the show that shakes the Southland. You are locked in to Clemson Sports Talk, and follow us on Twitter at Clemson Sports.
Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
A wreck on Killian Road at Faro will slow you down a little bit this afternoon. One other tie-up, Kennerly at Hollingshed. I'm Rob Sanders. You can reach out to me this afternoon if you're stuck on the 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line, 343-1055.
This report is sponsored by Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique, but you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
These days, being a small business means navigating uncertainty in a constantly changing situation. So if you're looking for one trusted source that will keep you informed daily, visit the iHeart Radio Small Business Crisis Resource. There you'll find small business resources to help you get through this, including the latest info on loans, grants, and other forms of relief. You'll also see stories about small businesses making a difference. So let's get through this together. Visit iHeart.com/smallbusiness today. That's iHeart.com/smallbusiness.
Hey, yo, what's up? Darius Rucker here. Harmony is the key to great music. It's also the key to staying South Carolina strong in the face of challenges like COVID-19. To stop the spread and get things back to normal, we all have to do our part. Help stop the spread of COVID-19 by covering coughs and sneezes and wearing a mask or face covering whenever you're in public. If we stay careful, stay connected, and spread caring, we'll get through this. Visit DHEC's website for more guidance on how to stay South Carolina strong.
The 2020 graduation is unlike any other. That's why T-Mobile is supporting iHeartRadio's Commencement podcast with inspiration from some amazing speakers. T-Mobile is also proud to announce the Uncarrier Jobs Initiative with a commitment to hire more than 5,000 new employees over the coming year. Head to T-Mobile.com/careers to learn more about joining the Uncarrier, no matter what year you tossed your cap. Then find your inspiration with iHeart's Commencement podcast in the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Would you buy a pool table on the internet? Big mistake. Chances are it'll be low quality, warp, and become unlevel. The place to buy a quality table that's gonna last is Carolina Pool Tables Plus. Forget the net. Carolina Pool Tables Plus, 799-5305.
People been saying to your friend, get a different face, and posting on their feed, they're super ugly. The things they say to them online are cruel and they're not true. So tell your friend, I'll stand up for you. Don't worry, I know what to do. Tell the world I see with an emoji to stop the bullies.
Know someone who's being bullied online? Send the witness emoji. It looks like an eye in a speech bubble, and it's in the symbol section near the clocks in your phone. You'll let the world know it isn't cool, and you'll let your friend know you care. Learn more about the witness emoji at eyewitnessbullying.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You can save money and help the environment without taking a vow of poverty. How does that work? Well, by choosing Energy Star qualified lighting for your home. When you do, you'll become part of a growing national movement. Just go to EnergyStar.gov and click on Take the Change a Light pledge. It takes only a few short seconds for you to have a long-term impact. Brighten your environmental future. From the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Stay on top of today's pop culture. Ace and TJ Mornings and today's hit music all day on 104.7 WNOK.
It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk again. The Clemson Tigers there during our interview with Mike Yuva from Watch Fox 57, picking up a commitment from four-star defensive end Zaire Patterson. So the Clemson Tigers get a guy. Look, he's a good-looking football player. He's got to put on some weight. There's no question that fact. It shouldn't surprise anybody, though, that Clemson continues to pick up prospect after prospect, given the fact that this is a team, again, that sits at the top of college football. When the pecking order of where you want to go to play college football, starts, it's Clemson, it's Alabama, and then I think it's everybody else. Obviously, LSU a year ago was very exciting. I think you're going to see them fall off a little bit. I'm not telling you they're going to be a bad football team. I think Georgia is a team that continues to be a big threat from the standpoint of this is a school that is recruiting, at an immense level. They are just dominating on the recruiting trail. But from the standpoint of Clemson and what Clemson's done and who they get, they're continuing to go out and land some of the top level prospects. And Zaire Patterson's a rangy kid. He's lengthy off of the edge, 6'6", nearly 6'7". From that standpoint, I don't know where, when you look at defensive ends in today's game by comparison to maybe defensive ends, say 10, 15 years ago, I think you obviously want to see guys more in the athletic mold. The thing I used to say is that the defensive ends today are like the linebackers years ago. The linebackers today are like the safeties and the guys in the secondary years ago. I mean, that's how much the speed has really changed in the game. And you want your guys up front to not only be hard-nosed against the run, but also be able to set the edge, pursue the quarterback out of the pocket, cover in the flats when necessary. Versatility is something that, we've hit on here time and time again on the show that shakes the Southland because of just how valuable that becomes. And so when you get guys like that, and we saw this significantly illustrated with Isaiah Simmons and, what he brought to the table. And so I don't care if you go from the nose guard, on a defensive line, an interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle, pick your position, through the free safety. You pick the spot. I want guys that are versatile. I don't care if I got an odd front. Doesn't matter to me what kind of defense I'm running. I want versatility. And so, from that standpoint, I think you look at, say, an Austin Bryant at Clemson, 6'6", long, ends up being around 250, 260 pounds. I don't think was nearly as versatile as a Clelin Ferrell. You have to kind of have both type players, but each of them gave you something, different. And I think where Ferrell may have been faster off the edge, where Ferrell may have been a little bit more athletic, the versatility of Austin Bryant gave you somebody that was a run stuffer as well. Could do, Christian Wilkins might be the bigger example. I mean, Wilkins played on the outside for a portion of his career due to injuries and then played on the interior. I mean, that's what we're talking about, versatility. And so if you get a kid like this, like Zaire Patterson, I think you are getting that. You're getting an athletic, lengthy defender. And for Clemson, you answer one of the questions in this recruiting class, losing out on a kid like Corey Foreman. Now you've got a commitment from a big-time prospect and a young man that's, I think, going to bring a lot to the table for Clemson as they move along on the recruiting trail here with that 2021 class. And so that class is up to 13 guys now, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. I think last week, picking up a couple of commits, took Clemson up to 12. Head over to ClemsonSportsTalk.com right now and double check my numbers here. Clemson commits in the 2021 class. Let's see that number. Yes, now up to 13 with the addition when you add in Bubba Chandler and now the commitment from Zaire Patterson. So Clemson, again, picking up a commitment from four-star defensive lineman Zaire Patterson just a few minutes ago, literally while we were in the middle of our interview with our good buddy Mike Yuva from Watch Fox 57. So the recruiting train, continuing to roll through Tiger Town. And again, Will Shipley, Bo Collins, Jordan Hancock, Barrett Carter, Cade Denhoff, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Jake Brenningstool, Marcus Tate, Dakari Collins, Ryan Linthicum, Phil Maffa, Bubba Chandler, and now Zaire Patterson rounding out your Clemson commits. I also think that in this 2021 class, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that's the 4th defender that Clemson's got out of the 13 guys, non-offensive players committed to the team right now in the 2021 campaign, as we are beginning to get some text messages rolling through as well. You could text us or call us 803-450-0086. You want to give your excitement over Zaire Patterson on the air. You want to bend my ear on the disappointment of not having the number 1 rated prospect in Corey Foreman in this class. We could do that too. Either way, it's really up to you. But this is a young kid that's really beginning to fill out. I think he's going to, depending on what his final season looks like, has a chance to finish up, really pressing to be one of the better defensive ends in this group. So keep your eye on that. 803-450-0086 on Twitter, at Clemson Sports. Again, the Clemson Tigers picking up the commitment of Zaire Patterson, 4-star defensive end, just a few moments ago in the midst of our interview. Nothing like some breaking news. What they call the old Murphy's Law? Like, Swanee, can you tickle the keys and pump out the article? Nah, not right now, but we're coming for you later. Stay with us. We're coming for you later. Stay with us.
Past 2 months, our homes have been, lived in more than ever before. Restore your home back to its original glory with the help of Zero Res Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning. Right now, get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $119 and a complimentary cleaning and disinfecting of common touch surfaces. Visit ZeroResColumbia.com.
Let me tell you who I trust to protect my home and my family. Modern Exterminating. Hey, it's Lawton Swan, and when you need top quality service from a team that knows what bugs you, call Modern Exterminating. 765-2315. They're locally owned and offer a full complement of pest elimination services, including complete pest control, termite plans, moisture control, and more. Check out Modern Exterminating online at pestfreesc.com or give them a call today, 765-2315. Modern Exterminating. They know what bugs you.
Slow drains, dripping pipes, these could be major problems. Call On Call to get the plumbing in your home checked and put your mind at ease. On Call has trained technicians, not trained salespeople, and they can help you avoid those plumbing disasters caused by unseen or neglected problems. Call the name you can trust. Call On Call Plumbing, Heating, and Air 24/7 at 803-781-HELP. That's 781-HELP.
On Call Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Pick up the phone and we'll be right there. Call 781-HELP.
Look for rain developing overnight with lows in the upper 60s. Tomorrow, rainy. We'll see highs around 80. For Channel 25 ABC Columbia, I'm Chief Meteorologist John Farley.
This report is sponsored by Unbound.org. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at Unbound.org.
Hello, my friends.
Graduates.
This is John Legend.
It's George Lopez. Congratulations.
This is uncharted territory.
Life is not fair.
This pandemic has put us in the realest place we've ever been in our lives.
I'm sorry.
Because life, like this graduation, rarely goes as planned.
Yours is a commencement quite different from the one you or anyone else envisioned.
You didn't choose this crisis. You didn't ask for it, but you can choose how you live.
And the world is waiting for what you'll do next.
Commencement, the podcast, celebrating the class of 2020. Available now on the free iHeart Radio app.
Not on my watch, our military service members say, as they volunteer to serve. Not on my watch, they say, as they leave their families behind to keep the rest of ours safe. As they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve, the therapists they need to walk again, the treatment they need to talk again, the lifetime of day-to-day help they need to live full and independent lives. When there's no more government funding, or a nursing home seems like the only option, or everyone says there's no hope for recovery, we won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch. Find out how you can do your part at findwwp.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
You know, you don't need to wash your hands to listen to us. Just tell Alexa to play Fox Sports Radio 1400 on the iHeart Radio app.
Again, the Clemson Tigers picking up their second defensive end commit in this class. Zaire Patterson just a few minutes ago to go along with Cade Denhoff. So a couple of four-star defensive ends there for the Clemson Tigers in that 2021 group. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. I mentioned this earlier when we were talking with Mike. The NHL has adopted a 24-team playoff if its season resumes. Mark Cuban and the NBA have also began to throw around some tournament-style, finishes for the final two playoff seeds, and then ultimately, I guess they would get into the playoff. From how I understand Mark Cuban's deal going down is, I guess all the teams not in, and I'd probably need to read a little bit more, but for simplicity's sake here, let's say that you've got the top 6 teams in each league in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Well, there are typically 8 teams in the playoffs. The proposal, as I kind of understand it loosely, would be something similar to this, where the top 6 teams in the East and the West, they're in. They would not be competing for the final 2 playoff spots. The final 2 playoff spots would have everybody else battling it out for it. Now, the teams that would be most threatened by this, I guess is the terminology you want to use, are the teams that are currently sitting in 7th and 8th place. However, the teams that are sitting in 7th and 8th place at this point aren't really guaranteed to be into the playoffs anyway, because they could fall off and be defeated. Ironically, in the West, one of those 2 teams in 7th and 8th are the Dallas Mavericks. So it's not as if this conceptual design coming at you about how the NBA could maybe put this thing together necessarily favors one of the big proponents of it, Mark Cuban. But it would allow for a multitude of teams to battle in for those spots. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8 teams, I think, is how they would have it played, which would leave the Golden State Warriors out, and I think maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers out in that scenario. Or maybe if it's the worst 2 teams, then perhaps the Minnesota Timberwolves will be left out. So, however they choose to do it, I think there are going to be a couple of teams at the bottom that are going to be left out. The other teams will be playing their way in to a tournament style, through a tournament style that would give you the top 8 teams, which would then play in the NBA playoffs in a more traditional NBA playoff format. I believe that is the conceptual design, a play-in tournament to allow everybody to fight for those final 2 seeds, makes more markets invested, and gives us the playoffs in the NBA and potentially a run for the playoffs for everybody outside of maybe a team or 2, which would be very interesting to see how that plays out. But that's the format that we're beginning to see unfold, both from the NBA and from the NHL. And from the NBA standpoint, the other factor that is trying to be downplayed, minimized, is travel. And so from what I understand, they would like to try to do that at the Walt Disney World complex. And then that would, allow the players to come in, stay, be housed, or however that works. But you don't have travel. You're not going city to city through airports. I mean, everybody just go to one place down in Orlando and put together this tournament and give the fans a season. Now, again, with no fans in the arena, home court advantages, things of that nature, it will definitely feel different. But I think this past weekend and the past couple of weeks, again, we've learned that fans are craving sports. You look at the numbers on that Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning deal, which was really good. I thought it was well done. Thought it was funny. Hearing Peyton Manning sort of throwing a little shade at the fact that Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady were sort of matching. He would not wear. Peyton Manning would not wear. He didn't want to wear red and black like Tiger because he didn't want Georgia and Kirby Smart to be able to put together any recruiting stuff or anything on social media about wearing that red and black for Peyton Manning. So he wore pink, but I thought it was uniquely done. I've appreciated golfers having to carry their own bags. I've appreciated golfers driving in carts, normalizing that sport a little bit. Really, I mean, it really, when you think about like having a caddy and having a guy that's helping you call, it kind of makes that sport even more elitist than maybe it can really be. I mean, because in my hometown, it's not a bunch of elite guys playing golf, bunch of normal guys. They're driving golf carts, maybe sucking down chili dogs and beer, and it's fun, way to knock around a couple of hours. Golf though, with a caddy, somebody carrying your clubs, helping you. Maybe golf would be better served if Tiger Woods and those guys, got to drive carts around. Do it a little bit more like the normal Joes. I was not opposed to seeing Tiger and them on carts. I was not opposed to seeing Ricky Fowler and those guys carrying their own bags. Made them a little more human. If you're anti-cart, man, maybe all these guys should at least carry their own bags. If you've never carried your bag playing golf and set it down in a little tripod stand come out or whatever, because that's the way all the kids did it, man. You couldn't afford those cart fees. You walked it when I was a kid, unless you're playing with your dad. Made them feel normal. That's what we're looking for, normalcy. I don't need to see some multimillionaire with his caddy carrying his bag and helping him choose clubs and helping him with the distance and reading the greens. Give me a typical Saturday, Sunday afternoon at Sweetwater Country Club, and I'm good. I'm good. Give me normalcy. And I felt like we got a little bit of that this weekend, watching those guys play, and boy, the eyeballs were on them. Even the NASCAR race was better this weekend because I think I'm getting accustomed to it. But one thing with the NASCAR race that I cannot get accustomed to is how it finished. We'll touch on that as we get out of here right after this.
Hey, how are you? How are you really? Your honest answer could be life-changing for you and countless others. Go to howareyourreally.org, share how you really feel, and you'll be part of a historic movement taking a huge step towards destigmatizing all mental health conditions. HowAreYouReally.org is brought to you by the Mental Health Coalition, a group of passionate organizations and individuals working together to end the stigma. iHeart Radio is proud to be part of this movement, and you can be too at HowAreYouReally.org.
Hey Tiger fans, Don Munson here, voice of the Clemson Tigers, and I want you to know there is no better way to support your Tigers than by being a member of IPTAY. Memberships start at only $60 and provides critical support for our student athletes to be champions in the classroom and in athletic competition. Be a game changer and visit ClemsonTigers.com/IPTAY or call 1-800-CLEMSON to join IPTAY today.
When a community grows, its hospital should grow too. And that's just what we're doing at Lexington Medical Center. We recently launched the largest hospital expansion project in South Carolina history. Our new 10-story patient tower will help us take better care of patients, including the tiniest infants who need special attention. It will also make room for the growing number of patients who need surgery and intensive care. At Lexington Medical Center, our mission to serve our community never wavers. We're here when you need us today, and we'll be there when you need us tomorrow.
Graduating is a huge step for the class of 2020, and while it may look a little different this year, it doesn't take away from everything you've accomplished. That's why iHeartRadio and State Farm teamed up for Commencement, a podcast to give you some neighborly wisdom from the biggest names in music, entertainment, and more to help you today and in the future. The Commencement podcast is brought to you by State Farm. Listen to iHeartRadio's new podcast, Commencement. Speeches are out now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor? Yes, I am. My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
Well, what are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. Don't you remember me? Don't you know that we miss you?
Miss me? Who misses me?
You know, all your friends in the forest. The trees, the pond, that little fort that you made out of branches. We all miss you.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
The forest is not that far away. Have an adventure today. I'm sure your mom would take you.
You're right. I should get out. I want to have fun. Play in puddles, catch frogs, and climb trees. Hey, Mom!
Yeah, hon? Steven, what is that in your hand?
It's my sense of adventure, Mom. It's telling me we need to get out of the house and have some fun in nature today.
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Fox Sports Radio 1400. Online at foxsportsradio1400.com. On your phone with the iHeart Radio app. And on hundreds of devices like Alexa, Google Home, Xbox, and Sonos. An iHeart radio station.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Tuesday afternoon, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swine, talking a little NASCAR here. So you recall a week or so ago, coming off of things going on at Darlington with Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott. We talked about the fact that Kyle Busch had gone up into Elliott's rear bumper and sent him into the wall, and there was a big to-do about all of that, and Busch, apologized later about what took place. And Kyle Busch doesn't have the best, does not have the best, what's the word, reputation, I guess it is. But one of the things that took place this past weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway with the Coca-Cola 600, Chase Elliott's cruising along. I mean, flying, and is the leader, and has a real choice to make, whether you to pit or don't pit. They got 2 laps left in the race, and Elliott dives down, pits. Pretty much everybody else stays out in the lead lap, and the thought process, if you're the leader, is tough, because if you don't pit, probably the majority of people behind you will pit and have fresher tires and be ready to make a run on you on the last 2 laps and probably pass you at some point. So it's like a lose-lose situation. If you pit and other people don't, now you're behind and you're probably not in any position to make a run. And so it's just a lose-lose situation, I really think, for Chase Elliott, but you have to feel bad. I mean, he was mad too because, you're listening to your team. You're doing what you're asked to do. You hope that if you pit, everybody else kind of pits behind you. It was a tough loss. And for Chase Elliott, he said, I've had some tough losses in my first however many years I've been doing this, he said, but unfortunately, it is what it is. And it was truly an unbelievable moment kind of watching that thing because I'm thinking, okay, you got 2 laps to go. Chase Elliott's in front. He's going to stay out. He's going to win this thing. But he didn't. And his father, Bill Elliott, in a great article written by our good buddy Ryan McGee over at ESPN, had similar struggles at the Coca-Cola 600. And, you look at it now and you think about when you dive into that pit, it's just amazing. I mean, it's just amazing how the outcome of, that race changed at that moment. They had been out on the track, I think, for a while. The crew chief had kept him out earlier in the race, and I think that was a part of the decision to bring him in. But, man, you watch that, and if you're not a NASCAR fan, people were going nuts, right? People were going nuts. Why'd you pit? Why'd you pit? You had it won. But, if he doesn't pit, I don't know that he has it won. And that's the great conundrum. Elliott said, just try again. That's all you can do. That's really the only option. You can't rewind it. That was the only choice. So you just that's the only choice. So they got to move forward. But, man, that was painful if you're a Chase Elliott fan. I know. Oh, boy, the Chase Elliott fans were on social media. You don't believe me, go Google or go on Twitter and search for Chase Elliott and pit. That's all you need. That's all you need to know. By the way, speaking of the NBA for a minute, I want to switch back to that because we talked a little bit about that playoff scenario. Here's the other reason that part of opening this thing up makes sense. Damian Lillard, who plays for the Portland Trailblazers, said, I won't play in a restarted NBA season if the Blazers don't have a true opportunity for the playoff. And you might go, man, that's selfish, man, this, man, that. But if you really think about it from the standpoint of some of these players, if you don't have a chance to get to the playoffs, if you don't have a chance to be in the playoffs, and Portland right now would be on the outside anyway, they'd be the 9th seed in the West. But the bigger point being, if you play for Phoenix or San Antonio or a team that can't get to the playoffs, why even come back to play pretty much meaningless games the rest of the way? But if you put in a playoff scenario like is being kind of thrown out there where they play in to get to those final 2 seeds, you definitely make it where big name players would be more willing and more likely to participate. And I think that's a huge goal. And I think that interests everybody across the board, multiple markets. And when you hear a guy like Lillard say that, it scares you a little bit, as it should, because you want to see the best of the best out there competing. And I don't know, given the COVID-19 virus, that the top talent on some of these teams would even be willing to show up feeling like they can't make it or they've been eliminated from the playoffs. You open this back up where everybody's kind of into a play-in scenario, those guys will show up. And some of them will show out and give you a great spectacle with a lot of pressure built into it. I think that would be a lot of fun and would give fans an abbreviated, accelerated, exciting finish to the season as well. Again, thank you to our guest Mike Yuva for hanging out with us. Appreciate all your calls, texts, and more. We look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Until then, as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers! And go Tigers!
Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan on Columbia's home for sports. Fox Sports Radio 1400. Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
A wreck on Killian at Faro has the roadway partially blocked.